In the fifth set, Labyrinth of Nightmare, there aren't as many good cards as in the previous few sets, but there is a large number of solid cards that can be used in specific decks or could be sided, and a lot of these cards made the top 10 list. To start off with, there are two honorable mentions in this set. There are two equipped spells, Mage Power and United We Stand. These two equipped spells give your monsters a lot of extra attack and defense, and they're worth considering in decks that need to run equipped spells. There are a few decks that focus on spells and the support that they have. However, in normal decks, equipped spells just aren't worth the risk, and they're generally considered to be bad. So they don't make the list, even though they're two of the best equipped spells that there are. And then coming in 10th place, we have Fairy Box. Fairy Box is a decent trap card. The main downside is it is a random card, essentially. So it could end up doing nothing for you, but if you get it right, which you have 50% chance of doing, your opponent's monster's attack will become 0 when they attack you, so you'll almost for sure win the battle. So Fairy Box can be an annoying card to play against, and it's definitely a decent trap card still, though most decks wouldn't play it. And then in 9th place, we have Mask of Restrict. Mask of Restrict is a good side card against decks that need to tribute. There aren't any decks that you would side this for at the moment, but in the right meta, Mask of Restrict could be a very powerful card that most decks would play in the side, as it locks down a very specific game mechanic. And then in 8th place, we have the elemental spirits, such as Aqua Spirit, Garuda the Wind Spirit, Spirit of Flames, and the Rock Spirit. These all came out in this set, and both Aqua Spirit and Spirit of Flames are both worth considering as level 4 monsters that you can just special summon from your hand. Unfortunately for Garuda and the Rock Spirit, they've both become outclassed by specific cards. The Rock Spirit is outclassed by Gigantes, and Garuda the Wind Spirit is outclassed by Sylphid. Both of these replacement cards came out in a later set, but the replacements for Aqua Spirit and Flame Spirits don't eliminate those two from consideration, because the new replacement for Flame Spirit, Inferno, is not as good as Flame Spirit, and the replacement for Aqua Spirit, Fenrir, requires 2 monsters to be banished. So Aqua Spirit is easier to use if you're just summoning a monster for a rank 4 play. Aqua Spirit in particular has gotten a lot of play recently in Mermail decks, and Flame Spirit likewise could see a lot of play if the right fire deck came about. In 7th place, we have Fusion Gate. Fusion Gate is used mostly in FDKs involving chain material, but this is a very real application of the card that can win games, and Fusion Gate is essential for the decks to function. So Fusion Gate is a good card that is a critical part of some decks. And then in 6th place, we have Jowgen the Spiritualist. Jowgen isn't as good usually as Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo, but Jowgen does have the benefit of being a spellcaster, and this allowed Jowgen to see a lot of play in spellbook decks. It's a pretty good monster in that it locks down special summons, which is a very important part of the game, and it prevents a lot of decks from being able to play, particularly dragon decks, for example. And then in 5th place, we have Jar of Greed. Jar of Greed is just a simple draw card where you use one card to draw another card from your deck. The problem with Jar of Greed is that it's a trap, so it's a little slow, so you can't just play it in every deck. But Jar of Greed is good in decks like Chainburn, where you need to maintain your card advantage while building long chains of trap cards. Jar of Greed is outclassed by Legacy of Yatagarasu, even though usually they're the same thing. So you would not play Jar of Greed unless you already were playing 3 Legacy of Yatagarasu. So that decreases its playability somewhat. And then in 4th place, we get into one of the first cards that I think is pretty good. Up until now, the cards have been mostly just what I would consider to be okay, solid cards. And in 4th place, we have Magic Cylinder. Magic Cylinder isn't as good as it used to be, but it's still a good way to inflict a lot of damage to your opponent, and it can be unexpected at this point. Magic Cylinder is a good card to play in a burn deck, and it's especially good now with Soul Charge being used and people paying a lot of life points for that. So you can win games off of Magic Cylinder. It's a pretty good card, though most decks don't play it as trap cards that can only be activated in the battle phase aren't usually as good. And then 3rd place, we have another good card, Kycoo the Ghost Destroyer. Kycoo is usually a side deck monster, and it's particularly good because it doesn't allow your opponent to banish cards from either graveyard, so it shuts down decks like Dragon Rulers and Chaos Dragons that need to banish monsters from the graveyard to summon their own monsters. And it also has the added benefit of being able to banish 2 of your opponent's monsters when it inflicts battle damage. So Kycoo is a good stun monster, and it saw a lot of play in spellbook decks because it happens to be a spellcaster. And then in 2nd place we have the first really good card in the set, one of only 2 that happen to be really good coming out of this set. In 2nd place we have Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is arguably the most splashable trap card at the moment. It's very good in almost every deck. You can use Torrential Tribute to stop almost any of your opponent's plays. You can also gain massive advantage if your opponent overextends and summons too many monsters while you have Torrential Tribute set. So Torrential Tribute is one of the best trap cards that's still legal to play. And then in 1st place, we have what I would consider to be the only broken card in the set, and it's also the only banned card, Card of Safe Return. Card of Safe Return is every time a monster is special summoned to the field from your graveyard, you draw 1 card. So there are a lot of decks where this just is endless card advantage. In decks like Zombies or Dragon Rulers, where you just special summon monsters from the grave through their own effects at no loss in card advantage, this just generates free +1s on command. So Card of Safe Return is pretty ridiculous in decks that can support it. So this was the top 10 cards in Labyrinth of Nightmare. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to check out some of my other stuff. I'll have links up after this.